Nothing contained in this podcast should be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. This content does not represent our respective employers and is purely the opinion of the podcast hosts. We are not your personal medical providers. Sorry, friends. So, if you have concerns or are seeking a diagnosis or treatment, please seek individual advice from a healthcare provider in your area. We are not liable for any risks associated with acting upon the information contained in this podcast. This is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only, so enjoy the ride.
Please drink responsibly and in moderation. Before drinking, please be sure to be of the legal drinking age for your country. We do not encourage the misuse of alcohol.
Welcome to Medical Media Mixer, the perfect cocktail. I'm Nicole Peniston, psychologist.
And I'm Tara Prisco, physician assistant. All right. So we planned on seeing each other multiple times in the past week. We saw each other once.
We did.
A week ago. We went to mom's big birthday bash.
Did she love it?
She's really happy. It was
good.
It was good. It worked out. Like you saw like friends who, like from far and people who she hasn't seen came, and she was very, very happy. But yeah, and then I was supposed to see you for career day, and I ended up with the flu, the plague as usual. We were just saying how it was a complete replay of last year when I had the flu.
Yes, but she made it to career day last year. This was not the case this year, but that's okay.
I have to say, March tricks you. You think you're better. You think nobody's getting sick. It's over, and flu bee sneaks in. It's like,
well, my condolences.
So, but how was career day?
It was good. It was good. It was fun. I feel like I connected a lot more with alumni that we did not know. We're not from our year.
Okay.
But I chatted up a few people, exchanged some business cards, and shared the pod. Of course, our favorite, Miss Lusich, was there.
Yeah.
So, and she came by the table several times. And then I told the students that if they listen to the podcast, they get extra credit. And then I cleared it with her after the fact. And she was like, oh gosh. And I said, I didn't say how much extra credit. You can do just like a one time thing. Like it doesn't have to be a lot. And I told her that she should be a guest on an episode. And she was super psyched about that.
Yeah. Come up with something that relates to something you remember her teaching us, or something that
she can cover those monkeys that really started it all for me. So,
oh yes, we talked about that a little bit, but what inspired you?
Yeah. And it was so funny. So many of those kids were like really on their hype game for her. Like so many of them were really, really talking about how much they love her class and how she's such a good teacher and relates it to real life. And there's one kid, he's like, I love taking tests in her class because like it shows me that like I'm really paying attention. I really get it. Because I'll read a question, I'll be like, wait, I remember that.
I think what it is I think growing up too, like, especially going to Catholic school, sometimes you have teachers, especially when I had nuns, that were just kind of like phoning it in. But she was there to like enrich and like really cared and wanted us to be interested and have
and she
fun
still
learning.
is.
I know. That's pretty amazing. I mean, she was like a kid when she taught us, and we think back.
That's what I kept telling people because they're like, oh, like, how old are you? And I was like, no, she was like early in her teaching career.
She really was. Yeah. But all that gung-ho has carried through, and that's really awesome.
And it's still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was good. It was good.
Yeah. And did you get to talk to, I know they have a podcasting club that they wanted somebody, a preceptor, to meet you?
No, no one approached. So I figured maybe they'll just reach out to us individually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not that we're experts or anything, but you know, I mean, we're 69 episodes in, so.
Fun number. Oh, that's why I chose the name of this episode. I'm calling this episode, well, I'll say it later.
Okay.
But I am weaving in some sexiness into the title, even though the topic is not sexy.
Other than that, we will see each other in a few weeks when our friend comes from out of state.
And then after that, we'll see each other for BookCon.
BookCon. I saw you gave me my ticket.
Which I got really upset. I was like sitting there and then I was like, there's got to be an app or something. So I like downloaded it, sent you your ticket. And then apparently they were doing free book autographing. You just had to like reserve a spot. And it was like 2 weeks ago. I was like, we never got an email about it. But they have some really good authors, and I'm sad. So maybe we can at least pick up books autographed.
One day I was just looking at their like lineup. And I mean, there's a lot of people that are going to be there. But I know off the top, there are about 8 that I know I have read.
Andy Weir.
That I can. Yes.
Which I was like, we were just talking about him. I am a huge Jodi Picoult fan. and I missed out on an autograph by her, which really hurts because I've read like at least half of her books, if not more than that. And there was somebody else. There were two other people. Oh, Lee Bergerdo.
I've read some of hers.
The Ninth House and something else.
I read those. Yep.
And there was somebody else who I was like, oh,
there's
like I've read their stuff.
Tomi Ademi,
yes,
which she was also
which I haven't read her stuff, but I was like, I know her.
Really good series.
Yeah.
But there was quite a few. There was definitely ones that I was like, check. Yeah. I know who they are. I've read some of their stuff.
And on the app, they did say that there'll be many, many other authors who are just like randomly signing and it's not, reservation only. So maybe there'll be some opportunities. I know just like at Comic-Con, they'll have like pre-signed books for purchase if we don't get like an individual autograph session. So
cool.
But it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. We have to discuss transportation because if we're getting a lot of books, we may not want to schlep on the train, but we'll figure that out as it gets closer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. So we'll be interacting a bit more. My entire April is already booked up and it's not even April yet. So
that's not a bad thing to be a little bit busy, to have a little bit of fun.
Well, now that the weather's getting nicer, not counting this week with the rain for the next 5 days. But
is it really? Well, today was nice.
Yes.
I didn't look.
I mean, I didn't really go outside that much, but yes, today looked nice from my windows, from my office.
I will be actually venturing up for a little mini spring break weekend, Thursday, Friday to Mystic, Connecticut. I don't know if you've ever been up there.
I've not. I've heard good things.
Yeah. I've gone many moons ago, back when we were engaged, not even married, with the husband. They have a cute little seaport, like a historic seaport. They have a nice aquarium. Back then, like we went to Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods casinos. I'm not taking the kids to casinos, but they have a cute little stuff. It's not a big drive.
Our parents took us to casinos when we were little. And we just stand there and watch.
I'm not a gambler anyway. But actually, it reminds me, when we went to Mohegan Sun way back then, we went out to dinner. This place is supposed to be, real good there. And it is really pretty, like all the glasswork and decorations in Mohegan Sun is very nice. But we went to this restaurant and I got this blackened catfish, I think. And, I like spicy things. I like whatever. This was so spicy that like your mouth, you couldn't taste anything else. Like it was like on fire. And then I was told Anthony, I'm like, here, try some. And then he couldn't taste anything of his meal. After he had, he's like, why would you do that to me?
Oh my goodness.
And there's never ever, that's the only meal in my life I can actually think of that was beyond like ability to like eat it enjoyably. Like I'm not a wimp, but whatever that blackened fish.
Look, I'm not a wimp. I just have gastrointestinal issues, as do you. So probably not advised.
But yeah, mouth on fire, like couldn't get the taste out of your mouth.
Yeah. It happens sometimes. Sometimes it be like that, as the kids say.
As the kids say. What is this? We're really old, but I'll probably
speak for yourself.
Socials. What is this dance that the kids do now where they like do this thing, they cover their face and they flap their hand in front of them? What is that? Is that from something? I sound like an old person. Is that from like a music video or something?
I feel like it's from something because I can picture it, but I can't.
I don't know what it is.
Off the top of my head, but I know what you're talking about.
I went to this charity thing. Was it last week with the dance moms? Our dance teacher, shout out to Miss Tara, same name, not the same person. It's a thing for the arts where they have different people compete and celebrity judges. And some people sang, some people played like, there was like a duo with like a guitar and singing, a couple of people danced. And it was like to raise money, like paid money for a ticket. There was a silent auction, all this. Fun. And then actually Miss Tara won. Awesome. Yay. But at the end they were just playing music and they had some of these kids who were benefited by this charity out there. They'd been singing and stuff and they're dancing and they're doing this thing. And then I just saw it online somewhere. And I'm like, I don't understand. Why are we covering our faces and shaking our hand?
It's not the anxiety dance, right? That's a little different.
I don't know what it is. I have no idea. Hey, young people, tell me what this is.
But you know that song, Anxiety. I'm like,
yeah, yes, but I don't know what it is. They put their arm out and they flap it.
I don't think that's it.
I'm going to put this in the socials and then everyone can comment and tell me I'm a really weird old lady who's like, duh, you don't know this reference.
All of those things are
duh.
true.
They don't even say duh. That's like very old language, isn't it?
You sound pretty mid right now. I don't even know if I used that correctly. But
they also say that our generation uses the word dude, and I definitely use the word dude.
I feel like we weren't allowed not to.
Yeah.
It was required.
means like so many things, like the way you say it, the emphasis can be like, dude. And they'd be like, dude.
You'd be like, dude?
They'd be like, dude. Yeah. Like,
it's, we're old. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
I mean, we can't change it, so might as well flow with it.
And we are going to have to record some more Patreon stuff because we have a new patron.
We do. Yay! Kool-Aid.
And I think it's somebody I know. Shout out, because I know you from Michigan, and she's a librarian. I believe she's retired now, but
awesome.
I like smart peeps listening to our stuff. So that's exciting.
Pass it on. Make everyone who gets a book fine listen to our podcast.
Yeah.
As punishment. Listen to us. Yeah, it's fun.
My goodness. Send us up book ideas, though, with medical references.
Yes, we will definitely take those.
I have more that I definitely could do. I have like 2 or 3 in my list, but it just takes more time to read a book to prep for it versus watching something to prep for it.
Agreed.
That's the only thing that limits me a little bit. But I have like 3 in my arsenal.
Awesome. I did my 3 for the year early, got them done. I was like, no more. I don't have the time for that.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Well, my next one is a book and show. Remember?
Well, yes. I am familiar with the show, not the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. What are you drinking? I'm drinking some random Pinot Noir that was in my fridge.
I thought you said Pinot Noir. I was like,
no.
You're eating black peanuts?
You know, and it said it was $5.25 something. I don't remember where I got it from, but I have it.
Okay.
It's good.
I am drinking today. It was supposed to be a shot, but I didn't have a shot glass, so I just put slightly more and then more of the mixer and then put it over ice, as you can see. So mine is called the Kool-Aid Shooter.
Aha!
Yes. So it is if you're doing just the shot, it is 1/3 ounce of vodka, 1/3 ounce of melon liqueur, 1/3 ounce of amaretto liqueur, and a 1/2 ounce of cranberry juice. You gather it all, pour it in, and take the shot. Pretty easy, right?
Sweet.
I didn't taste it yet. Let me try it.
Yeah, go for it.
It actually does taste like Kool-Aid.
That's nice.
It really does. It does taste like Kool-Aid. So as a entree into what we're going to talk about, you have heard the phrase, drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yes. And we mentioned this in our last episode, one of our episodes. Yeah. Or in person. I don't remember. Conversations. But yes, but it wasn't Kool-Aid. It was
not. So that's what we'll get to. So drinking the Kool-Aid, the phrase dates back to 1968. There was a nonfiction book called The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test.
Yes.
And then that influenced the events in Jonestown, Guyana, where over 900 members of the People's Temple movement died by drinking not Kool-Aid, but Flavor Aid that was laced with cyanide and other drugs. And they were essentially like a doomsday cult. And this was what they were. They had all plans. Most of them voluntarily drank the Kool-Aid. Not all of them voluntarily took it, because of those 900, several of them were children who were fed the laced Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Or flavored. And then one of the many documentaries I'm going to talk about today that I watched. It was a survivor who was actually just not in Jonestown on the day of the mass suicide. But she said it was Flavor Aid. Kool-Aid was too damn expensive. They were cutting costs. So
yeah. True.
Yeah. I mean, if you got to poison 900 people, you really got to count those pennies.
You got to make it cheap.
Yeah. So, but I know that, I don't know if you remember this, but I thought it was associated with that other cult where everybody killed themselves, and they were all wearing the Nikes, and they wanted to get on the Mbop planet comment was coming.
Yes.
I thought they drank Kool-Aid too, but that is not where this phrase originated from. And so essentially what it means now when people are using it is that you are just giving in to a conspiracy. You are blindly following something that seems a little bit off. You are drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, conforming.
Yes. Which, that takes me into something else, is there were some conformity experiments back in the day. And so you may have heard this, because I feel like most people have seen this mentioned in media of various sorts. But essentially, one of the very first conformity experiments occurred in Swarthmore College, which is not too far. It was right down the street of where I went for my graduate degree. But basically, it was a group of people, 8 male college students. I don't think it matters if they were male or female, but this was the experiment. So of the 8 college students, 7 of them were plants, and 1 of them was the true person. And so on the board, there would be a drawing of 1 line and then 3 other lines. 1 was much, much shorter. 1 was clearly much, much longer. And the other was an approximation of that original line. and everyone had to say which line, A, B, or C, matches the first line. And so the goal was that the people who were the plants would incorrectly identify which line was the matching one and see if the true experimentee would conform. And it was a near 100% rates of conformity. Even though you could clearly see that line's way too long, that line's way too short.
Yeah, I'm so hard-headed. I'd be like, no.
Right. And so they do think that it was because of the number of subjects. If maybe there was like a half and half split, people may have been more willing to go to the correct answer. And so they did this test multiple times, overall averaging all of the responses. After that initial test, they said that about 64% of people said the correct answer once they did it, multiple trials. But still almost 40% would give the incorrect answer and conform to other people. And so I think that kind of gives you a better sense of when we're talking about people in general, how there are some people who are just more likely to yield or to conform to the group thing, to what's going on, because you want to fit in. You don't want to be the odd man out. Right. I think also part of this too is I think it depends on when you gave your answer, because if you've already heard like two people go against the grain, you might be more likely to also go against the grain because it's not just you versus other people are also kind of calling things out. And so there were a lot of different variations on this. And that's just kind of that basic idea about conformity, which I will be talking about these sociology topics in the future. In actually the next 3 or 4 episodes are all kind of linked to the social psychology stuff. And this also links into the episode I did prior talking about the MK Ultra experiments about, going along with authority, mind control, all that kind of stuff. All of these sociological things are tied together.
Can we just take a moment to describe the difference between sociology and psychology and how they differ and how they overlap?
Yeah. So sociology is more the study of groups and what happens when people are together in groups and how they react and how that group in itself can change how an individual acts. But it also looks into more societal things differing from culture to culture. So it's kind of that larger aspect of psychology. And when we're talking about more than one person, where psychology focuses on the individual and we see the individual patterns we see across different people, across different cultures and societies and ages and things like that. Psychology is more individual. Sociology is larger. There's lots of really cool sociology experiments that people have heard about. There's one that I keep saying I'm going to cover, and I will at some point in the future. It's just kind of a Debbie Downer, so I always put it aside, but it's a really, really good and interesting story when you look into the truth versus how it was kind of initially proposed about groupthink. So groupthink is a psychological phenomenon that occurs within a group of people. Everybody, again, tends to think the same way, even if we know it's wildly incorrect or kind of goes against the norm of the larger society. Once you're in a group and everybody's doing the same thing, you're more likely to go along with the group. Let's see. And then all this other stuff is going to overlap with stuff I'll talk about in the future, so I won't go into it too much. So I have watched like all the things on my topic today, which I am naming this episode Sexy Cults and Not So Sexy Cults, because there's lots of cults I'm going to be talking about. And sex is something that comes up in many cults, but not all of them. Some cults, it's almost the opposite, where they ban that kind of sexual interaction. I think it's trying to keep people a little bit separate, where, the more sexiness you have, at least with one individual, the more likely you guys are bonded. Right. Exactly.
Or it's we only have sex with the leader because it's like harem type.
Or we all have sex, but we only have sex with us, the people in the group. Right. So, it's definitely used as a manipulation tactic in a lot of this stuff. I'll talk about it in an upcoming episode because, like I said, there's going to be a lot of overlap in my next few topics. So I'm going to kind of bookend these documentaries with fictional films that are really, really interesting, both because they're both very well done, but also it gives the viewer the feeling of what it actually is like to be involved in that cult atmosphere without it seeming like weird and crazy. Because we hear about these stories and we're like, I would never do that, or I'd never get involved in that, or my parents aren't in a cult, so I wouldn't be in a cult, where it's like it's a lot more mental manipulation. Than
it doesn't just happen like that.
Exactly.
There's a slow process to get you in.
Yeah. So the first fictional film I'm going to talk about is called The Sound of My Voice. Have you heard of that one before?
Maybe if you talk about it, I'll remember it. It sounds familiar.
So it wasn't super popular, but I will say this movie was phenomenal. I originally watched it in grad school when I was taking a class about religion, and we had a seminar, a part of it, on cults. And so I had to give a presentation on that. Of course, I volunteered as tribute to talk about that. And so I watched that movie and then showed clips of it in the class because I felt like it gave a really good understanding of the true experience and how you start to doubt yourself and how you can kind of drink the Kool-Aid, start to give into it after a while. So it was a 2011 American psychological thriller, which was written by and stars Britt Marling. Are you familiar with her? Because she's been in a lot of trippy stuff, and I'm obsessed.
Yes. What was that show?
The OA.
OA.
I would love to talk about that show, but there's just so much that goes on that I don't even know where I would start. But
that's
yes, she was the lead character in the OA. Yeah.
Yes.
So she is the lead in this as well. And she plays a charismatic woman who claims to be from the future, who has essentially living in a basement in some undisclosed location in California and forming a cult. And so throughout the movie, you see little clips of kind of her mysterious life. You see her wandering down the street in nothing but like a towel and very disoriented. And then someone picks her up, and then you see her in this basement and she's using like an oxygen tank to breathe and seems very ill. And you kind of don't really get a clear sense of who she is. And for the artistry of the movie, it's very intentional, but I think it also helps feed into how she can claim this crazy thing that she's from the future, because she doesn't really have a background or a story that anyone really knows. So she can essentially, she's a blank slate. She can make up anything and other people impose these ideas on her. So the movie starts out with a substitute teacher and his girlfriend, who's an aspiring writer. They want to make a documentary about this cult that they've heard about going on. And so they get this wild idea that they're going to infiltrate the cult and get like the first person experience for it. And so they do a lot of research on it. They find out how they can get selected by the cult, because they don't take just anyone. You can't just like knock on the door of a cult and they're like, come on in. That's not how it works. So they do a lot of planning. At one point, Peter swallows a device that can record things. I don't know exactly how that works in the digestive system, but whatever. He rigs these glasses to have a camera on it so he can record when he's in these meetings.
Pre-meta glasses.
Yeah, pre-meta glasses. He had to make his own meta. And then so their goal of all of this is that it's going to be this big expose, and they're going to declare that this woman, whose name is Maggie, is a fraud. So they do a lot of prep, and they kind of find people who are peripherally involved in the cult to kind of weave their way in. And then when they are deemed ready by these cult members, they are instructed to shower completely and dress in white surgical gowns. And then they're blindfolded and driven for miles, they say approximately 5 miles from where they got picked up, and brought into a secret basement location. And then they meet a higher ranking level member of the cult named Klaus, and they have a secret handshake. Like, you can't make this shit up. Like, it's really like 7-year-old, secret handshake craziness. But that's kind of like the first part of indoctrination. Like, you need to learn this handshake to get in. And because we know that they have relatively ill intentions about this cult, they're going to study that damn handshake and they're going to get it right. Because if they don't, they're out. So already, even though they think they're on guard, they are kind of giving in, because they're going along with some of this stuff. And so once they join and understand the handshake, they're joined by 8 other members who are all also in these white gowns, kind of very nondescript people. They're all white people, if that helps. Not all white people go in cults. There's cults in other countries too. I'm just saying for the context of this. And then that's when they meet Maggie for the first time, who comes in. Her face is covered in like a diaphanous white sheet, and she lifts it up, and she looks like a normal blonde lady with an oxygen tank. But like right from the jump, she's very mysterious, and she has this very eloquent way of speaking, and she's very, very, very intense. And she right off the bat explains to them that she has a very strict hygiene protocol, because she doesn't use these words, but basically she is immunocompromised, and so she cannot be exposed to any germs. And so that's why they have to be real intense about the cleaning. So then she starts telling her story that she is a time traveler from the year 2054, and she has a little tattoo on her ankle that she says is from the future. It's just some really crudely drawn anchor, and it has 54 next to it. And then she says in the future, there's famine and war and hardship, and she was one of a select group to go back into the future She has to go back to the present because she's from the future. Sorry, I was thinking of the movie. I was like, that's not right. She has to go back to present times to warn everyone about, the coming essentially apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
So she puts them all through really intense psychological exercises, and some of it's kind of graphic. There's this one part where essentially she's forcing people to vomit, which, as you know, for me, having a vomit
phobia, yeah.
It was really hard.
Not a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really difficult to watch, but it was also so intense that you're kind of like, you want to know what happens next.
Right.
And basically through these series of exercises, she's really digging into people, breaking them down. At one point, Peter starts crying because of whatever she says is just really hitting him. And she gets like in his face and pulls his glasses off. And she's like looking at them. And then she's like, you're hiding something. And he's trying to like keep it together, which he does.
Pooping in his pants right there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no pooping requirements for the cult that I'm aware of.
But he's
I'm sure.
I'm made. I'm caught.
Yeah. And so she basically kind of breaks everyone down, gets them to be under her spell, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But then this is the weird part about it. They get to go home at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
So Peter and Lorna go back to their house and they have some sexy times. Sex is not part of this cult. And then they're kind of talking about like, okay, well, what's up with her? What's going on? And you could tell already that Peter is starting to get indoctrinated in it and he's starting to believe some of this stuff. But Lorna also kind of questions things. And she's like, well, how do we know she's not from the future? Like, we can't prove something unless we can disprove it. And she's like, well, how do you disprove that someone's from the future? And so even though she's not as deeply into this whole idea as he is, she's definitely kind of open to the possibility of like, we came to figure out if this lady is a fraud. That means we need to really challenge everything that she says and see, in order to challenge something, you have to somewhat believe it. So there's several meetings and then things go south real fast. Basically, Maggie wants the cult to kidnap an 8-year-old girl from Peter's class, because remember, he's the substitute teacher.
Okay.
Because she has determined that this 8-year-old girl is her mother, because remember, she's from the future.
Right. Got it.
And that if Peter and Lorna don't help kidnap this little girl, they're out. And so far, they're in, but they really haven't been able to prove one way or another. So they're like, we still got to get the story. Like, we can't leave. So they go along with it.
Wow.
So Peter is taking his kids on a trip to a planetarium, and that's really where they're gonna get this girl. They're gonna just lead her out the back door, and some other cult members will be waiting there to snatch her, and off she goes. So, but while all of this is coming to the forefront about this plan, and they're really developing something that Lorna's like, wow, this might actually work. They might actually be able to steal this kid. She goes and she is actually approached by an agent. They say it's from the Justice Department. I don't really understand how the Justice Department would get involved in cults, but I also don't know like who the prosecuting authority is and all that and whatever. But essentially this lady knows that Lorna is part of the cult, doesn't realize that she's, trying to debunk it.
Infiltrate it, right.
And then this woman's name is Carol. Carol tells Lorna that Maggie is a wanted felon because she's pulled this shit somewhere else. And so now Lorna is like, okay, now I got to stay in so I can catch this lady, get Peter out of trouble, save this little girl. I got to stay. So, I'm sorry. I thought they went to a planetarium. They went somewhere even better. The La Brea Tar Pits, which I've never been to, but I really want to go.
No, I haven't either.
Yeah.
But
those who do not know, the La Brea Tar Pits is an active paleontological research site in urban Los Angeles where there are tar pits. And in those tar pits, they have found bones of trapped animals, including dinosaurs, which is pretty fucking awesome. If you fall and you die. And there's actually an entire show, not cult related, called La Brea, where people fall in, there's an earthquake and people fall in. And when they fall in, they come out in an alternate timeline where the dinosaurs are. It's a pretty cool show. I gotta say, from first episode I was in, I was like, okay. Because if there's going to be an alternate timeline, it's going to be in the La Brea Tar Pits. So now they're at the tar pits. Peter he brings the girl to Maggie, who somehow sneaks in with all her medical equipment, and she can't be out in public, but she's able to see this little girl. The child knows the handshake.
What?
Exactly. And it's not just like a Miss Mary Mac thing. Like, it's very complicated.
There's more to it.
Yeah. And then the little girl asks Maggie, like, how do you know that handshake? Like, I made that up with my friends. And Maggie's like, you taught it to me. because you're my mother. So then, of course, as the viewer, you're like, what the fuck?
No, I'm like, she was spying on the kid on the playground, and that's how she figured it out.
True. But I think like the point of this is like,
brain.
yeah, but now you're like Peter, where you're like, oh my gosh, like this stuff does seem
this
true.
is faded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically that's kind of where the movie ends. We don't know if they kidnap the girl. We don't know what happens, but all we do know is that we see Maggie leave. We don't know where the girl is. And but the law enforcement officers sweep in and take Maggie, but we still don't like see really where the girl goes. And the other cult members then say that it was Peter who betrayed them, but Lorna was the one. And she, as like the other cult members are like going after him, she just stands there and smiles. So she like screwed him over too, her boyfriend. So that is how I'm starting the conversation on cults, because it really tells you how, despite how mentally strong these two people think they are, they do get sucked into it. And I think part of the reason they get sucked into it is, one, they're both, they're not happy in their jobs. They want something better. And they're like, this is going to fix my life.
Right.
Which we know that that's what a lot of cults kind of pull people in, is that they're offering them something that they're
unhappy.
Missing. Exactly.
Right. People are desperate in some way. And what's interesting is this one, you're not living there. You're not caged in. So it doesn't feel so trapping, even though mentally it is.
But that's how a lot of cults start. You don't move to the commune on day one.
Right.
There is no commune on day one. Commune comes 2 years later, when now everybody is armed and having sex with each other. That's how this works.
Yes.
So, and then I think even at the end too, you start to wonder, like, was Lorna going to set him up the whole time? Like you then start to question like reality at the end of it. Like, was she really the bitch from the start who didn't care if he got in trouble? Like, was she really on the side of this Justice Department person? At some points we question if this Justice Department person is even real. So it's like, there's lots of parts of it where you really are then left questioning your own judgment, which I think that's what happens to a lot of cult members.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that really great movie, hard to find. You can,
I've heard of it though,
download it off of somewhere. I watched it a while ago and took copious notes at that point because I used it for a presentation. So I didn't need to rewatch it, but it's definitely out there. And then, as you said, Britt Marlin from the OA is in it. And honestly, thinking about it, it's kind of the same character.
Yeah.
She says she's from the future, but then she's from the past and she doesn't age.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole thing with the octopus.
We need to do a dance.
The telepathic octopus was, that was really trippy, but I was still in. Wait, so I have a question. This is off topic, but did you watch the OA to the very, very end, to the last episode?
I believe so. I mean, it was a while ago. There's 2 seasons only, right?
I want to say 3, but you could be right with
3.
2.
But it's the one, and at the end, the school.
It is
and
2
then
parts.
The
You're
second
correct.
season is like, I think they're at the psych unit with the guy. Yeah.
But do you remember the very last episode?
I don't. It's been a long time.
The very last episode, they break the 4th wall. And the whole time you're like, wait, was this all made up or is this a TV show?
I have to go back now. Because it was very trippy and I remember liking it, but I'm that person who can't remember details about a lot of things. So I don't remember at the very end.
But there's a lot of parallels because with the OA, remember in the first season, they have the hand movements that signal things.
And it's Phyllis from The Office.
It is Phyllis from The Office. I forgot about that, but you're right. She is Chef Kiss in this also.
I love her.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, things don't end well for her in this, but
yeah.
But she's still good. So that's how we started. So as I said, I watched a lot of cult documentaries. I'm not going to go over each one. I'm just going to hit the titles. And if it's something you've seen, tell me yes. If it's not, I'll give you a little blurb about it. So one of them or 2 of them is, have you seen the show on Netflix called Explained?
Maybe.
Like they do different ones. It's like very scientific.
It's like different
so
episodic.
It's like Explains diamonds.
Right. Yeah.
So there's an episode of Explained cults, and then there's The Brain Explains cult leaders. So I watched those 2, and it really just pulls from these real life examples and talks about it. So
breaks it down. Yeah.
If you want to just like a quick and dirty one, that's a good one to watch. Have you seen, this one was really interesting, The Garden, Commune or Cult?
The Garden. No, don't think I've seen that one.
So it's kind of framed as a reality show, but it's not, where basically there is this commune where these kind of hippie people, but it's current times, are essentially trying to build their own community where they're self-sufficient. So they grow their own food. They, have to build housing, but it's kind of like in a dump where they're living, like a literal like dump, like there's like trash and shit.
Right.
And so when it starts off, people know about the commune, and then I believe it's 5 people want to join. So you see these 5 new members coming in. And essentially you kind of see who gets to stay and who doesn't. And this one girl keeps getting like kicked out and keeps trying to like infiltrate her way back in. Because she really, really she really wants to be part of the cult. It's just like the other people don't like her. And she's like kind of annoying and a little bit quirky and sometimes pushes back against the rules. So they keep kicking her out and she keeps coming back and it's a whole thing.
It's weird. Reality show /
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think it's a reality show. I think it was a documentary. They just got in at the point where new people were trying to join. So it felt reality show. Nobody was getting voted off the island except for this one girl. They just didn't want her there. But like she is kind of like cringy at points and you are kind of like, girl, just go home. Like,
yeah, you're annoying.
Yeah. But like they live in like broken down school buses or like have to build their own housing. It's interesting.
Okay.
And there's definitely a clear leader and everybody kind of listens to what he says, even if his judgment isn't always the best. So that's kind of interesting to see how maybe some of this, maybe at this point, the garden was just a commune of hippies trying to, live off the land, but this definitely has some tinglings of potentially shifting in the future, depending on, who's in power.
Mm-hmm.
So another one is Love Has Won, the Cult of Mother God.
I know what that is. I know of Mother
So this
God.
is the one where the lady died and they kept her body covered in Christmas lights.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to go in. Basically, this lady said that she was Mother God. She had a cult. She essentially both drank and starved herself to death. And then the cult members just kept her body.
Yes.
And that was the downfall of the cult. Somebody reported that they were toting around a dead body places wrapped in Christmas lights. And that was what happened. This one was really fascinating. The Way Down.
I don't think I know that one.
So this is about a cult that it was. So one thing I will go into in a minute, but sometimes cults are offshoots of traditional churches. It's just like one guy's like, I'm going to go preach over here, but I'm going to tweak stuff a little bit to make it fit me. So this is definitely one of those. I want to say The Way Down, and I may be incorrect on this, but I want to say they started off as a sect of the Mormon Church, which the Mormon Church has many different sects. LDS, Church of Latter-day Saints, is only one of them. There are multiple. So I want to say, I'm like 90% sure she was Mormon because just some of the teachings were very similar with Mormonism. But part of what she started teaching was that God don't like fat people. So y'all need to lose weight. And essentially, if you lose weights, you're more likely to go to heaven. And so it was a lot of food restriction, exercise, but then she was also paying for herself and others to go get gastric bypass in foreign countries. And it was a whole thing. But basically, how that kind of got shut down was she was essentially encouraging child abuse if your children were a little bit too mouthy. And so some children were being abused, and then that got reported, and that was kind of the end of The Way Down. The Synanon fix. This was a little bit before our time, but Synanon started off actually with a really amazing idea, and it was essentially like an addiction recovery group.
Okay.
Where
so the concept was...
Yeah. And it really worked really, really well for people, but as the leader kind of got a little bit unhinged and fell back into his own addiction, everything else kind of fell apart. But the Synanon fix, if you watch that, it's really good because it tells you how great it was until the leader went downhill. So some of this stuff, that's like where it's that fine line between religion and cults is like you could be doing, or even just like, a structured group, self-help group. Yeah. Because it can start off with really great progress and people really benefiting from it. But then if the person in charge starts tweaking things or gets greedy, that's when things kind of fall apart. The Vow or Seduced inside Nexium.
Nexium, the medicine?
No.
Not it.
So Nexium, she said not it.
Not it.
So Nexium, NXIVM, that was the cult that the girl from Smallville was the head of. Okay. Well, she wasn't the head of. She was like a high-ranking member. And she was basically trafficking women into the cult.
Lovely.
It started off as a group that basically was helping people be more productive in their jobs and it was like a seminar, like an educational seminar on how to.
That's how it all starts, with a seminar.
There's a lot of seminars in this, yes. But it started off with that. And then there was this offshoot called Dominus. I'm probably going to get it wrong. And I just watched it yesterday. I didn't write it down. Dominus Obsequium Feminatum, which they were told was like a female empowerment group. But in Latin, that means master over female slave.
Right.
Nobody looked that up, I guess. Nobody Googled what that means. Because this was not that long ago. So you had access to Google, girls. You could have looked this stuff up. But this was the cult where they were branding the women. with the symbol, which then when they learned about it, the symbol was really just the leader, Keith Raniere's initials. So he was branding women with his initials. They were influenced to have sex, not just with each other, but with him. And so things went real bad for NXIVM. But does the name India Oxenberg mean anything to you?
No.
So Catherine Oxenberg, if I'm remembering correctly, she was like a famous actress in like the 80s. So this was her daughter, got sucked into the cult. But she actually went to a few of the meetings with her daughter. It's just her daughter really got into it. Her career wasn't where she wanted it to be. So she was like, oh, Mom, like I'm going to join this and it's going to help me take off like you did. And so she supported it. And then she finds out about the branding and they were starving women, checking their weights. It was a sex cult. And so it took a long time, but she was able to pull her daughter out of the cult after quite a long time. Jonestown. We just kind of talked about it. So you're familiar about Jonestown and the People's Temple.
Right.
Again,
they bought all this land in Guyana. Mm-hmm. Is that what it was? And then they moved there. But there was a lot of disputes. I think the federal government from the U.S. was after them, right? They were coming there.
Yeah. So it started off the People's Temple in, I want to say it was Chicago. I might be wrong with that. But it was like one of those little homegrown churches. At the time, and this was in late 60s, early 70s, they were really all about unity. So it was Black, white, Hispanic, whoever, everybody come together, everybody sit together, you're all family. And so it started off again with this really good idea. But the more people they got in, the more money that the head of Jonestown, Jim Jones, was making. He roughly based his ministry off of another person, father. I'm blanking on the name again. I just watched this yesterday and I forgot. But there was another precursor to that, or another person who was early civil rights movement trying to promote good things, but he was caught for fraud. So that was why that person didn't take off. But he basically was kind of learning like from this guy, like, hey, you could have a great civil rights message, but you can also make bank off of this. Right. And so he was making a lot of money off of it. They bought this land in Guyana to start their own society, essentially. And then when they got there, it wasn't what it was all cracked up to be. They had to build kind of their own homes and stuff like that. A lot of them weren't trained. They had limited access to food and water. There was no appropriate schooling or anything like that. And so a lot of family members whose families were in the cult, whose loved ones were to a senator. And for some reason, I want to say the senator of California, but that could be wrong. Right. And so he flew down there to check the place out, saw the place, looked all good, went to get on his plane. They killed him and half of the staff with him. And then once that got reported to the police, of course, then they're like, oh, crap, government's coming to get us. And then that was what kicked off the mass suicide. Right. But as I was saying, many people did not want to commit suicide, and they were either forced to drink the cyanide-laced Flavor Aid or were shot and killed. There were even really heartbreaking stories, trigger warning for anyone who's listening, how they would put in like medical syringes the cyanide-laced Flavor Aid and feed it to babies and small children because the mothers wouldn't do it. And some mothers did do it, but some of the mothers would not. And so someone else did it. Yeah. So as I said, over 900 people died. I watched that yesterday. There was one woman who was a survivor. She just didn't happen to be in Guyana yet. She said it was funny, but not funny. She was like, everybody says that, 972 people died, but it was really 971 and that effer who made them all do it.
That's true.
So I was like, yeah, she's right. Yeah, like a lot of people died. And then the ironic thing about that is not really ironic, just weird. He really wanted Jonestown to be like famous. So they had a teen basketball league who happened to be on a travel game. So all of those kids survived because they were at a travel game that weekend. But before the mass suicide, he contacted them and said, come on, boys, now's the time. Like, get your guns. We're going to war. And all of those teenage boys were like, no, sir. We're not there. We're not doing that.
I'm playing basketball.
Yeah, exactly. So some people did survive. Escaping twin flames.
Oh, I watched Twin Flames.
So tell me all about that.
Well, I mean, I don't remember all the details because that's just my brain. But I mean, I know it was this couple and it was like an MLM / self-help / cult online, essentially. Right? It was all connections made online, which is, I think, some newer than the old way, that we need to do things.
And more dangerous because you can reach more people. Yeah,
exactly. And they were telling certain people like, no, your twin flame, even though you maybe were heterosexual your whole life.
Nope. Your twin flame is this. Yep.
Right. Somebody of the same gender as you, or like, it was very intense.
But then not only that, now were they setting two women up together, then they were forcing one woman to play the male role and essentially become trans.
Yes.
Which blew my effing mind that there was one particular person who went through through the literal medical process of transitioning their gender because this cult told them to.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And they were just creepy. That couple in general, they were just creepy AF. They were just creepy.
But their whole beginning process, which again pulled people in, was that they found each other. There is a thing called a twin flame where it is the other half of you. And if you find that person, you will be in the happiest, most compatible relationship of your life. But you have to find your twin flame. And then this cult would help you find that person. Yeah. Except they were assigning you new genders to do it.
So. Right. It was...
Which I'm like, if that's your other half, it shouldn't matter what gender you are.
Right. The whole thing was a mess.
It was a whole thing. Wild, Wild Country.
I've seen that title online, but I've not watched it.
Yeah. So this one goes back, I want to say it's again around the 60s, which I'll get into a minute about why so many cults were popping up around then and why so many are popping up now. Political unrest is basically the main thing. But Wild Wild Country was one of those, and you remember there were a lot of yoga-based ashrams and things like that.
Yeah.
And basically these folks were all into that. They purchased some land in, I want to say, Montana, and they were building there, and the other people around there, they're not really shown in the best light. The non-cult member townspeople, they're kind of shown as like hicks who don't really know anything. But basically they were not loving that all of these people were coming in and they were calling them hippies or yoga people and all this stuff. They just didn't like this big change to their societal dynamic. And so the people in the cult didn't like that. So they poisoned the water supply and tried to kill people.
Okay.
I know a lot of people got sick. I don't think that many people died, though.
Okay.
Yeah. And I bring that up because there's a mockumentary on, if you've seen Documentary Now, where the mockumentary version of that is that this town, the cult believes that fruits and vegetables are people and are alive and you can't eat them. And so they start attacking everybody in the little hick town that eats fruits and vegetables because they're eating people.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's special.
I mean, it's a mockumentary. It's not real, so it's funny.
Right.
Makes it lighter. Holy Hell is another one of those yoga documentaries. There's been a lot of yogis and ashrams that fell into more sexual abuse, many, many, many of them. So I'm just going to kind of leave it like that because there's like 6 different documentaries about different ones. But it's all kind of the same thing where people went for the spiritual enlightenment and then suddenly they're in a sex cult. The Deep End. This one is very fuzzy in my head. And I think it's because it actually wasn't finished. It was like in several parts and the end kind of like hangs off. But it's another one where this woman basically is purporting to be some sort of spiritual entity and know everything about people and help you discover yourself. But the more people get tied into her, the more they see that like she's just kind of crazy. But then when they try to challenge her, she kind of turns it around on them. So it's like, is it manipulation? Is it what? But it's another one of those questionable ones that it feels like maybe it's like a pre-cult situation. Like it's not going in a good direction. Heaven's Gate, that's what we were just talking about the Mbop comet is coming. So we all have to put on our Nikes and
they like lay on these cots or whatever, right? Yeah.
But Heaven's Gate went on for a very, very long time before all that. There was actually the leader, that weird guy who I'm sure you could picture with the white hair and the big eyes. He actually was married, if I remember this correctly, and his wife was part of the cult and they were leading it together, and then she died of cancer. And then after that, things, I mean, they weren't going great when she was around, but they really spiraled out of control after that.
Yeah.
This one is controversial, and I went back and forth about adding it, but I know a lot of people, if they're listening and they have watched cult documentaries, like that's one of them. But Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, that's about the LDS offshoots and the Warren Jeffs and his multiple baby wives and multiple children. That is a whole separate animal.
LDS.
Yes, the FLDS. So that's not the same as the LDS. It's an offshoot of that. Children of God. I feel like that's a cult we grew up hearing about because a lot of our celebrity crushes were in it, like River Phoenix. Rose McGowan grew up in
Famous people were very susceptible to these things, apparently.
So, but ironically, with Children of God, they were in this cult as children, so they weren't famous yet. It was just luck. Whereas, again, not going to go into it because there's a lot of controversy about whether it's a cult or not. Scientology does have a sect that purposefully recruits celebrities. They have a celebrity sect.
Again, it's MLMs and cults sort of overlap at a certain point.
They do.
There's a financial gain.
There is.
And seminars and things you need to buy. And I feel like it does. It overlaps for sure.
A very recent one. Dancing for the Devil.
I did see
this
that.
was the TikTok cult. Which at first I was like, girl, they didn't know TikTok cult about dancing. And then I watched it. I was like, oh, shit.
Oh, no, wait. Yeah. They're manipulating.
Yeah, and that poor girl and her sister was in it. And then she got out. Now they can't get the sister out. And
yes.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
And they're like kids, like, you know, like young adults.
Young adults who just want to be dancers. They just want to be famous. They're all very talented.
They want to be famous. Yeah.
And they join what they're told is basically like a production studio.
Right.
But then they're really not producing
it's
too
just
much.
Like in a house and you're stuck there making videos all day.
Yeah, dancing all day. For
but
devil.
We didn't talk about the one that was defined our childhood. The Branch Davidians. David Koresh.
Girl, I didn't finish. I didn't get there yet.
Because I feel like of all the cults of my lifetime, that's the one I mean, 90s.
So, yes, David Koresh and the Branch Davidians definitely was a cult. I think I didn't add it here specifically because in retrospect, and there's 2 really good documentaries that talk about this, they became famous because the government was trying to intrude upon their right to have their separate
firearms and such.
Yeah. They actually didn't have any plans to do anything until the tanks rolled on up. And then that's when all the hell broke loose. And even today, like in one of the documentaries, people who were involved governmental wise were like, we fucked up. Like we caused this.
Oh, yes. I mean, if you watch all those documentaries, it was a shit show.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree. Like the people who were part of the government and they said the communication, the way
they didn't know how to handle it. There'd never been something to that size before, but that happened in Waco, Texas. And I think that's the name of the one documentary called Waco. Yeah. Which poor Waco got like a bad rap. Like it's a whole ass town, but now everybody knows it for that.
So fun fact, back when I was in, I don't know, 7th or 8th grade, whenever that happened, whatever year that was.
I want to say it was, like 92, 91, 92.
Yeah, it was right in that area. For English class, we had like a fun project where we had to be like newscasters. And so we had to like present our news. And
you had your blazer on.
Yeah, so our news group, it was a few of my friends. Actually, we went to high school with them. So I think Kim, B, Jenny, I think Elle was in that, if you know who I'm talking about. Ours was called Everyday People News, the news that knows you. Do you remember the song Everyday People?
Yes, Everyday People.
So, but stories we covered, and that was like the big story at the time. So I don't remember if I was an anchor, but I
don't know if the Branch Davidians were everyday people, but they definitely were not trying to hurt nobody.
That was the name of our news station.
No, I get it, but like if you were talking about other everyday people, I don't know.
It was we are talking to the everyday people.
Oh, okay.
But anyway,
got it.
But it was the news that knows you. So I remember like having to write.
This is the job you never got, isn't it?
Sort of a paper on this to be able to report this. So I remember I had to know like all the facts of what went down in order to be a little reporter and talk about it. So
yeah.
Sticks in my head.
Yeah. And it was a shame because a lot of children died in that. And the majority of people were not trying to be violent or do anything, although they were stockpiling guns. So even though in the moment they weren't planning anything, it wasn't a good look.
I mean, there was definitely sexual stuff.
Yes. It wasn't a good look for them, but
pregnant people and
it just hadn't reached
locking
FLDS level yet.
And
it hadn't reached the level of, hey, let's jump in there yet, but it got there real quick. And a lot of people died, unfortunately. Stolen Youth, the cult of Sarah Lawrence. This one was weird.
Okay.
So basically this girl,
Sarah Lawrence is the
college. Yes. It's like it's known for being like a literary school.
I was going to say, it makes me think, writing and women.
I was going to say stereotypically, they say a lot of lesbians go there. It's for anyone.
Yeah.
You know, if there's a lot of lesbians there, good for you, girls. Good for you.
Yeah.
But I think that's just a stereotype. But this girl was going to Sarah Lawrence and she had her friends and then they decided to all live off campus. And then her dad moved in and basically made these teenagers like turn into like a little cult. And like some of them had sex with him and were giving him money. It was a crazy story. But the documentary on that is called Stolen Youth, Inside the Cult at Sarah Lawrence. It does sound like the dad had some questionable stuff before all this. I just don't think it was like full cult leader level until this happens.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, some of the members, not his actual biological child who was involved, but they still kind of support him. So concerning. And then finally, Sins of Our Mother. This is the Lori Daybell story. Do you remember Lori Daybell?
I don't.
She's one of our QAnon ladies. Yeah, and she was convinced that her children were evil and she had to cast the devil out of them by killing them. Yeah. So even though that's part of a cult, that story was more focused on her, but it is the larger QAnon conspiracy theory things, which there's a really interesting documentary on that. I forget what it's called because it's not called QAnon, but it starts off talking about 4chan and how 4chan led to QAnon and who Q is. They think Q is Donald Trump, but I don't think Donald Trump knows that he's Q. I think it's somebody like pretending to be him. Like, I don't think he's that organized to be doing that, but yeah. But it goes into Pizzagate. Do you remember all that?
God, yes. In the basement of the pizza parlor, they're trafficking children.
Although apparently now some of that shit's in the Epstein files. So was it a conspiracy or not? So, quick rundown. We just talked about a lot of stuff. Cults. The difference between churches, denominations, sects, and cults. Quick. So a religion starts out with a church. And I don't mean like the singular building. I mean like the Church of Scientology, the Church of Christianity, things like that. And so those tend to be more rooted in a significant history. They have a large gathering, and then they tend to have little individual sects. So the Christian church has the Eastern Christian Church, the Western Christian Church, the Catholic Church. Then there's different denominations like Lutheran, Baptist, and so on. So you kind of see it's like it starts off as like an umbrella, where it starts off with a big piece and then goes down into larger things. And then it depends on what we call your worship or your service held by a congregation. So I go to church versus, capital CH. And so then there's religious subgroups. So this is like we were talking before, someone identifying as Roman Catholic versus Eastern Orthodox or things like that. Those are all still following under those larger headings. And then denominations, that goes down even smaller bits. Apparently there's 200 different Christian denominations in the US alone.
Okay.
And then they kind of fall under that hierarchy of like Baptist and then denominations of
denominations
Baptist. Exactly.
Right.
And then those denominational subgroups like Southern Baptist versus other kinds. I don't think there's a Northern Baptist, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like there's 11 types of Lutherans, there's 11 types of Methodists, 9 types of Presbyterians. So all that kind of hierarchy that's falling down. And then I think where it starts to get a little questionable is that those denominations are not always based in theology. They tend to be a little bit more political. As we know, King Henry VIII separated from the Church of England. And so that was definitely more of a political power move that then turned more theological.
Now we call that the Episcopalians, which are called Catholic Light, actually. They have less rules. I looked into that when we were thinking about baptizing kids. And they have less rules. Women can be priests. And they accept gay marriage. And they still kind of feel Catholic-y, so it's comfortable for people who are wanting to jump ship.
Nice. And it does fall under that larger Christian heading. So,
but the way it started was because he wanted to get divorced. That's the whole thing.
So he could marry another woman. But instead he
let me make my own rules.
But instead he just beheaded them, which if you haven't seen 6, Chef Kiss, phenomenal play.
I haven't seen 6.
It's really
good. But I did watch The Tudors, so I know.
But this has like dancing and singing. And cool costumes.
So yes, I've seen the costumes.
Yeah. So then there's different sects. So that was what we were talking about, the Church of Latter-day Saints versus the FLDS, which is the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. That is the sect that engages in polygamy, where larger LDS do not. So that's kind of where sects come from, is they abide by some rules, but not by others, and blah, blah, blah. And then this is where it gets very cloudy with cults. So Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses are not considered cults, but some people colloquially consider them because they're such an offshoot and have such very different rules and regulations and things like that. And there is a lot more of a demand about time and money commitment for those differences versus like the larger Christian or Catholic churches, Christian church, sorry. And so that's that. And so I think the big things that people think about cults are the charismatic leader. But in Explained Cults, made a good point, not trying to be controversial, not trying to piss anybody off. Jesus was pretty damn charismatic.
He was, true.
But just maybe not in the manipulative, negative way. So charismatic leader alone is not what makes a cult. Another part of it is there's a lot of rules and restrictions. So separating people from their families, having strict rules about dress, sometimes changing your name. Although we do have confirmation names. So what's that mean?
True.
There's a little bit of stuff everywhere. And then usually there is that power differential. So wanting money from someone, wanting sex, wanting property, those things. But again, when you go to church, you got to give an offering. So what does that mean?
When we had to get married and we had to like show up and
You
throw
have to
envelopes.
pay. Yep.
Well, throw envelopes for like a week or two and then like go and then you pay and then you pay the organist and you pay this and you pay,
And I guess like some of the differences is it's more vague. Like, yes, you should give a donation to the church. Where for some of these other cults, it's like you must, and again, this is where it gets really messy and I don't want to offend anyone, but it's like tithes for like the Mormon church. You have to give a certain percentage. Exactly. But that's still a church that is recognized. So then it's like these other cults where it's like, well, your tithe that you gave for the month was this percentage, but we want more.
Right.
Or I'm not going to go too much into Mary Crosby of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, but she has been accused of being a cult leader in her church. And there is recording that she admitted was herself, basically saying, God don't like poor people.
Wow.
So you have to give me more money.
Okay.
And God don't like greedy people and God don't like ugly people. So I think that's really when some of that, it gets messy because now you're kind of using that figure of worship against people if they don't do something or if they don't say something. Right. And so I think that manipulation level is where it gets cloudy. I'm not saying Mary is a cult leader, and my heart is with Mary because she just lost her son. So that is separate. And I am sorry for your loss, Mary. I know you're listening. Because I watch you, so of course you're going to watch me. Some of these other things that she has admitted to saying to her congregation are a little questionable.
Yeah.
That being said, if you start your own little individual church, you need money to keep it running. And if people are going to show up every week.
I'm sure you've heard about the Church of the Spaghetti Monster.
Of course. Tell me about it.
I don't know much, but basically it's to sort of prove a point in the face of.
But didn't it become like a thing though then? After the proving the point?
Taxes and not like. It's about sort of pushing up against those rules.
And you wear the strainer on your head.
Yeah, but they protect churches from certain things financially and, your rights and those kind of things. So it's pushing back in a sort of tongue-in-cheek way. But it's true. You could just start it. Like we have a name for our following. Our friend texted us the other day. You are our Mixies.
The Mixies.
So should we have the cult of the Mixies, the Church of the Mixies?
The Shaker of the Mixies.
The Shaker
I shouldn't have done
Mixies.
that. That was not appropriate.
That was not a good...
We have a Shaker of Mixies.
The Shaker of Mixies. So you are our following.
But as opposed to the common traits of a cult leader, which are charisma, authoritarianism, narcissism, manipulativeness, delusional qualities, exploitative, and unpredictable, we are none of those except for charismatic. We are very charismatic.
Have they studied like these leaders for like personality disorders that they...
So yes and no. The problem is with these ones that like really hit the highlights, a lot of them end up dead. So there's only so much research we can do. And a lot of it is reports from other people. There was a case study of Sari Chalin, who was someone in England who was a victim of coercive control, who ended up killing her husband. And then they did study Patty Hearst. She was abducted by the Symbionese Liberation Army and essentially had Stockholm Syndrome, undergoing brainwashing and torture. That feels a little muddy too, because she was, if I'm remembering correctly, wasn't she kind of like the hippie of the family and like not like super business oriented? She was already on like the fringes.
She was, yeah.
And so kind of getting pulled into that. But like some of them were famous cult leaders, Charles Manson, Jim Jones, David Koresh, Marshall Applewhite, that's the Heaven's Gate. All of these people ended up dying as part of...
They have, I feel like, that very similar way.
That they're all white men in power? Yes. I said it. Sorry. And it's not all white men. There's a lot of cults studied in Japan, in India, in other places. I'm just going on the American ones. Although, interestingly enough, on this list is R. Kelly. I wouldn't consider him a cult leader. I think he had a cult following. And I think he used his power and influence to get girls brought
if
to
we
him.
want to take it that far, there's a whole lot more people that we could pull into that.
And that's why I say it with like a question mark.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that a cult. I would call that...
I think I call it sex trafficking.
Right, exactly.
And that's not necessarily cult. Like I don't... But then when they did interviews with some of these girls, they did like kind of believe that he loved them. So... I could see a little bit.
That's a manipulation, but it's...
What's the difference between manipulation and brainwashing? It's not that different. Yeah. And then this one I also find interesting because, again, I don't think it started with him. It just escalated. But L. Ron Hubbard, technically he's the founder of Scientology. Yes, he was involved in the initial iteration of it, but then he passed and things really went off the way.
Taken it crazy. What's that guy whose wife is missing?
She's not missing. We all know where she is. She's not missing.
But like Ron Hubbard lived on a boat for a while.
Oh yeah,
right?
He was a captain.
And all the people.
Fun fact, do you know what city in the US Scientology is the homeland for?
I was going to say LA, but I'm sure it's not.
Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Are you kidding?
The first church of Scientology is in Elizabeth, New Jersey, 2 blocks from the courthouse.
Really?
I used to walk past it all the time.
Wow.
That is
in New York.
That is the very first church.
The big one in New York.
The one in Elizabeth is the very first church building of Scientology.
Wow. Yep. Interesting.
It's a beautiful building. I've never been inside.
Well, yeah, the architecture.
They won't let me hold the e-meters. But they used to have a full row at BookCon, so who knows, in a couple of weeks, we might be saying different things about L. Ron Hubbard.
Maybe I'll read his fictional books. That's about as close as we'll get.
I mean, he was a very talented writer.
Right.
Had a lot of strong ideas, liked to live on boats, quirky dude. But I do feel like even though they're saying him, I think it's because he's been crowned kind of the founder of this. But it does feel like things didn't truly go off the rails until after his passing. So it's like,
it got
how
worse.
much of it can we
blame?
Although he was convicted of fraud in absentia in the 1980s. So what do you think fraud in absentia is?
I don't know what absentia means now.
It means in absence. So you weren't physically there, but you were defrauding people.
By association or by...
Probably just by name, if he's trying to sell these ideas to people, but he's not physically there.
Again, MLM.
So what I'm hearing is that...
So is LuLaRoe a cult?
No, but it is an MLM. That being said, LuLaRoe was founded by Mormons.
It was. True.
Look, they still got good leggings.
I know.
Still got good leggings.
That was
and those
the closest
things last.
to a cult I've ever been in. I mean, I still have a few dresses.
I've dabbled in many. The cult of Labubus.
Yeah, you are a Labubu cult follower.
I'm not a cult follower. I am an early adopter. I get really into new things.
That fell down hard. That peaked at Christmas. It was like,
but you know what? They still sell and so I feel like it depends on where you're at. But so what I want to bookend this with is there's another really interesting article. It'll be linked in the show notes about the neuroscience of social conformity. Goes into a little of that stuff I started off with. And then I wanted to end the discussion on cults and cult movies with a movie called Martha, Marcy May Marlene. Have you seen it?
No.
Also came out in 2011, psychological thriller starring Elizabeth Olsen in her film debut.
Okay.
Also Sarah Paulson, Hugh Dancy.
Oh.
And so this movie starts off with Martha, who is also Marcy May, who is also Marlene. So it's one person, 4 names. 3 names, technically. It starts off where she has been abused by a cult for 2 years, and she escapes the cult and calls her sister, goes home to her sister, and you see essentially the PTSD that happens afterwards, where she was physically and sexually abused in this cult's commune in the Catskill Mountains. It was fictional. It's not a real cult. But then it's kind of showing her life after in a series of flashbacks of to what she experienced in the cult versus why she's struggling with things now. So one really basic example, but I feel like gives you that sense of how that adjustment period is difficult afterwards. In the cult, all of the women were not allowed to eat until after the men, but they had to prep all the food, clean everything, set everything out, everything like that. And so now 2 years later, Martha is in her sister's house. They're preparing dinner together. And she has an urge to pick up a piece of carrot and eat it. And she stops herself because she remembers the first time she did that in the cult, she was hit violently across the head and told that you're not allowed to eat until the men have eaten.
Right.
And so it's kind of ingrained in her at this point. There's several other things, like she ends up having sex with the cult leader. But then when she is caught being very, very mildly flirtatious with another male member, she gets in trouble with that. She gets so upset that the cult leader is sleeping with other women that she actually sleeps in his bed while he's having sex with another cult member.
Okay.
Which then flashes back to later on in present times when she's at her sister's house. She has a nightmare. She's really triggered. She's really upset. And she goes to sleep in her sister's bed while her sister's having sex with her husband. And of course they freak out. They're like, what the hell are you doing? Because the catch of all this is she never told her sister she was in a cult, because she's at that point where she can't even admit it, that this happened to her. She just says, oh, she had a boyfriend and they were together for a while and now she left. And the sister, Lucy, she asks her, like, did he abuse you? Did he hurt you? Did he keep you there? And she just says, no, 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 no. But then the sister sees all of this weird behavior. Like at one point, she just is skinny dipping in public. And the sister's like, what are you doing? Because in the cults, they'd be naked all the time, or like nudity was not frowned upon. There's a party at her sister's house and she starts to have flashbacks and she thinks that the bartender at the party is someone from the cult who's following her to abduct her and bring her back. So basically, she's out of the cult. She's in a safer space, but she's a hot freaking mess. And her sister and her sister's husband don't know why. So it gets to the point where like she can't stay with us. Like she's too unpredictable. They're trying to have a family and they're like, we need like everything to be good for us to try to have a baby and bring it into the world. So they decide that they're going to take her to a mental health treatment facility because they think she's had a psychotic break after the thing with the bartender, not realizing it's like a PTSD flashback. And this is another movie where at the end you're just like, what happened? So this whole time she thinks these cult members are after her. Nobody else seems to see them or know that they're there. And she's sitting in the backseat of the car as her sister and her sister's husband are driving her to the mental hospital, and a car is following them. And in the car is one of the cult members.
Of course.
So it's like, maybe she hasn't been making this up the whole time. Like maybe they have been following her the whole time. So But Elizabeth Olsen, phenomenal in this. I mean, she's always good in everything.
She's
but
always good, yeah.
To see that this was like her film debut, you were like, wow, she jumped in deep. Like this was rough. There were nude scenes. There was a lot of very like graphic, scary stuff. There's one part that's really hard to watch where you kind of see how she gets groomed into the cults by essentially getting drugged and raped and then told that that was your blessing.
Okay.
And then you see another scene where she essentially has to do the same thing to another new girl, and how she's not even questioning it anymore, even though you saw how traumatic it was for her. I think that's a really good way to end this talk on cults, because this happens to real people. You know, in my psychology career, I've met a handful of people who were former cult members, and, you know, have, by the time I've seen them, they've been separated from it for quite some time. So they're in a much better place. But just knowing that like some of that stuff really shapes your interactions with people and your trust of people and can really cause significant psychological damage over time.
Oh, yeah. I want to mention a couple of fictional ones that I've read just real quick or watched to just throw out there for people who are interested. So I don't know if you've ever watched the anthology series, The Sinner.
Yes.
With Bill Pullman.
Yes.
The second season of that covers a cult.
Yes. And I knew that. I forgot to add it to the list.
Yes. And then The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, where she comes out after being a teenager, breaks out and is freed after a doomsday cult. And then there are two books. One is the Corman Strike books, which are J.K. Rowling's pseudonym. They're about a detective agency. And so the book called The Running Grave is them investigating the cult, and the woman Robin goes inside the cult and has a very traumatic experience. That's a really good one. And then another one's like a thriller book series. It's the character's called Morgan Reed. What is the first book is called Turn Back, and it's about her who was a child in a cult, and then now she's an FBI agent, and something ties back in and she goes back to it. So
was that made into a movie? Because I feel like I've watched something very similar.
I don't think so. I know there's a bunch, like I'm looking on my like Amazon, there's like 12 books in this series. I've only read the first one. I probably got it as like a free preview type thing, and it was fun, interesting. I don't know if it was made into anything, but those are some fictional ones that you can suspend disbelief and not feel so bad about the reality of real cults, but interesting ones.
Well, and I think like the real life side of things, like I said, I've worked with a few patients. That wasn't the focus of our treatment, but it did come up as clearly a very relevant part of their past. Every single one of them had family members that were involved in this. So I think that's also a very different dynamic versus you just walking in off the street and being like, I want to be this. Mm-hmm. I think when you're born into something like this, it's much, much harder to break that connection, especially like you see with a lot of these cults, when people leave, their mothers, sisters, brothers, fathers, kids are still in it. And now they're out on their own. It's a much larger issue to deal with in therapy or things like that, when not only have you left what you knew the world was, but you've left every family member, and so you have no social support. You're
disowned by your core family.
Or not even disowned. It was just like, I left in the middle of the night. They don't know I left. I can't tell them I left. Right. So sometimes it's not even like, I mean, a lot of the times they cut you off. You're not allowed to have contact, but sometimes it's, for your own self-preservation, escaping essentially, and then not having anyone to go to or anywhere to go to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my sexy story about cults.
For episode 69.
For episode 69, sexy cults and not so sexy cults. You're welcome.
And we did not play into the episode 6-7. We missed that totally.
That you brought it up. I was like, nah,
I got
girl,
a middle
I'm good.
schooler, okay, and yeah, I just want to punch.
I thought we were over that.
Apparently not. It's going to be a mental illness. Just wait.
It's going to be a mental illness.
I'm telling you, there's going to be people, or when they have dementia one day, they're going to start just going 6-7, and the nurses are going to be like, what is going on?
And then they're going to look it up and they're going to find out it doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. Anyway.
This was a long episode, but hopefully it was a good one.
That's okay. It's an interesting subject. I'm always intrigued by cults. Definitely. Serial killers and cults, you got me.
Well, we didn't talk about the Manson clan. You got both of them on that one.
That's another one.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for listening to Medical Media Mixer.
The perfect cocktail. Cheers. I drank most of my Kool-Aid. That is dangerous.
Minus the cyanide.
That's good that yours isn't cyanide. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Medical Media Mixer podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps others find the show. Want to keep the conversation going? Follow us on social media. We're at Medical Media Mixer Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and on Pinterest, the Medical Media Mixer board.
If you'd like to support the show and help us grow, check us out on Patreon. Patreon.com/Medical Media Mixer Podcast. And on Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Medical Media Mixer Podcast. If you have a topic idea, feedback, or just want to say hi, send us an email at medicalmediamixer@gmail.com. You can also stream all of our episodes and find more info on our website, medicalmediamixer.podbean.com. We're available on all major podcast platforms, so no matter where you listen, we're there. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep mixing medicine and media.